Hi there, I'm Nick Dimmock. I'm Director of Investor Relations at Megawatt Mosaic. Today I'm here to introduce you to Helen Passfield. Helen Passfield's come on as Managing Director. Obviously Cedric has a huge amount of interests and experience in BESS and solar around Europe, also some established companies that Megawatt Mosaic's going to be working with, so he's actually better suited to the chairman position and the kind of patriarch. So Helen's been brought in. Helen is SEMA qualified?
I am, yes.
Yes?
Yep.
And you have been in renewables since 2010 when I first knew you?
I have, yes.
Yep.
I mean, basically since everything started to take off in the UK with all the feed-in tariffs as it was back then. Started out in retail solar in the UK,
yes,
and packaging those into SPVs for investors.
You did Light Source, didn't you?
I did.
Yep.
I worked as a developer at Light Source. So at that point, it moved more towards greenfield and brownfield sites, so some agricultural and some industrial, rooftop and ground mount site development at that point.
And BP, just to fill you in, BP invested 200 million in Light Source. I think took a 50% shareholding, so that was a good transaction. Basically, all company invests in Light Source. And then from Light Source as a developer, you went on to.
So then I've worked in a number of asset management roles since then.
Yep.
I moved sort of further along the value chain and started working more in the construction and the operational side of things on the asset management side.
Yes.
So worked in a number of different areas in that, within private equity.
Impacts?
Impacts, yes.
Yep.
So
One of the biggest asset managers in the world, Impacts is.
Yes,
yep.
Yes. I worked on their renewable funds. That was a mixed portfolio there, mixed wind and solar, all European based there.
Brilliant. And then we got Canadu going in 2020, didn't we?
Yeah, we partnered together on that one as well.
Yes. After 2 years, from 2020, they now got a $4 billion project pipeline. You can look them up, Canadu Capital. Me and Helen were instrumental in that. And then you've been, last 2 years, it's been Alliance, one of the biggest, the German insurer.
Yep, correct. So yeah, the last couple of years, I've been asset managing for Octopus, who originally they were, you mentioned Light Source, originally Light Source and Octopus were in partnership.
Right.
Octopus provided the investment and Light Source was more on the practical side of things.
Yep.
So yeah, the last couple of years, Octopus and more recently Allianz as well, which, like you say, is the German insurer. Both of those mixed portfolios, well, actually Octopus more so wind, Allianz mixed portfolio of wind and solar, again pan-European. So in the Nordics, where wind is more successful, and then Southern Europe, where solar is generally a good bet to have there.
Yes. So obviously you're very excited about joining Megawatt Mosaic.
I am.
Because you've taken the position.
Exactly.
Getting back into the cut and thrust of the entrepreneurial business.
Yeah.
What do you think we can do in 3 years?
I think we can do an awful lot in 3 years, and particularly if I look back on other portfolios I've worked on, if I look back 3 years now, you know how far they've come along, and certainly typically you would be looking at 18 months for a wind construction project, you know, from being ready or permitted and actually going through to operational. 18 months would be, you know,
the construction period.
Yes, that would be a typical time frame you'd be looking at. So I think there's an awful lot that we can do in 3 years, and I think we would, we've currently got a pipeline, I think, of 28 to 29 sites. So I think in that period, I think we can certainly push a lot of those through to permit. Some of those we would want to sell on at that point, because
and take the money
so that we could then move some more of them on into construction. So we would be looking at all the sites as individuals and looking at which ones do we want to sell on at permit versus which ones do we want to keep through construction and ultimately on into operational and asset management, and finally a long way down the line repowering. But I'd like to think that we would keep some of them, you know, long term in that kind of time frame.
Yes, you look at some of Cedric's maps of how European grids are developing. There's a hell of a lot of wind going in, especially in the north. There's quite a bit of solar going in the south. Both of these are intermittent. Wind is the ultimate intermittent.
Of course,
you know, you've got no control of it.
Yeah.
There's huge potential for BESS all across Europe, and BESS is the only way that you can get renewables powering the world, or energy storage. But principle, the winner has been BESS, which is battery energy storage solutions.
Yes, certainly. And I mean, more traditionally, your way to balance the grid would be within a balancing contract, which would run alongside your PPA. So that's basically the running alongside the revenue that you're taking in. But obviously the advantage of BESS, now the technology has come along a lot more, is that you're in control of that. So you're in control of your own production and when you release that to the grid, which is clearly more helpful than being reliant on an external party who you're contracting with. So that is the major advantage, that you keep that control within your SPV, and therefore you're better able to manage that value back to your investors.
Because in the early stages, I remember going around and seeing Lime Jump years ago. In the early stages, they were building projects, but these projects were then controlled by the national grid. So the national grid would control when you load shifted, but now they're growing more autonomous.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly there are still stoppages, and I mean, not just down to the weather, there's also environmental conditions which need you to put a stop on your production.
Yep.
That it can be for various reasons, for safety, for conservation. So if wind speeds are too high, there's potential of fires, etc. So you need to put a stop on. There's certain rare, like bird and bat protection, that you also may need to put a stop on. Yeah. There's lots of things you can do with the technology to make that more efficient, but clearly having BESS in place to back that up is obviously very efficient and a good answer as well.
Brilliant. So look, this is what I am bringing you. BESS, which is energy storage. Energy storage is the holy grail of renewables, which will allow renewables to power the world. And now you've got a developer, a constructor and an asset manager as your managing director, complementing the existing team and bringing all that experience. So for existing shareholders, congratulations. For potential shareholders, I don't think that there's a more brilliant offering. So don't hesitate, download an information memorandum and subscribe into Megawatt Mosaic before we close on the 14th of February or sooner. Thank you ever so much.